Hey there! Welcome back to The More You Know About the Things I Know About. And yes, until I come up with a better transition, we're just gonna have to stick with this for the moment. Alright, so thanks for joining us again. This is episode 2. If you haven't seen the first one, go check it out now. I'll post links everywhere about it. Today's episode is going to be about vehicle lights. So that's probably a pretty boring topic for some of you, but for many of you that may have heard me rant about it, this is an opportunity for me to kind of prove my point on the things that I've been saying. So like at last episode, I'm going to have a couple of points and we'll go through them one at a time, starting with point number 1, which is, what am I talking about when I say vehicle lights? So vehicle lights, I am specifically talking about headlights and taillights. And one of the things that has frustrated me for years is how other drivers seem to either just refuse or be completely ignorant of how headlights work. And so here are some of the facts about how they work and how you can be a responsible driver and courteous to the other people on the road. First of all, headlights I'm referring to are not just the low lights or the daytime running lights when you turn your car on first thing during the day. What you get are the little orange lights usually that turn on in the front that are kind of to the side of your headlights. Sometimes on some cars you will also get the tail lights showing up. Usually it's just the front lights or the daytime running lights as they are referred to. And so the good that these do are simply to, I think, just to be spottable while you're driving down the road. All my information that I'm getting comes from SGI, so I'll post links to that below. But I've got a few resources online that I found that point specifically to Canadian and Saskatchewan laws in regards to those headlight rules. So if you live in another province and you're watching this, make sure you double check whatever organization runs your insurance for vehicles and how those rules apply specifically to where you are. Most of what I found is pretty compatible across Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, places like that, but I haven't dug too deep into all of the other provinces. I'm specifically just looking at Saskatchewan because that's where I live. So first up, everybody has their own opinions on when they should or shouldn't be used, but if we dive right back into the guide for SGI, it gives us pretty clear instructions as to when to use those certain lights and how to use them properly. One of the first things that I found in the SGI book about headlights was, it is advisable to have your lights on at all times because studies show that vehicles driven with lights on at all times are much less likely to be involved in collisions than those operated with their lights on at night only. The law requires the use of headlights from half an hour after sunset until half an hour before sunrise and at any time when visibility is poor. So there we see that the daytime running lights really just only apply to those front, usually, like I said, orange lights that are on. That's not even your low beams. When you turn your lights in your vehicle, truck, car, whatever, all the way on or all the way forward on the knob, those will activate the low beams and also your tail lights. I couldn't find any specific reason as to why the tail lights don't automatically turn on with the daytime running lights. And while it's clearly law to run your low beams or nighttime running lights between certain hours of the day, it seems completely permissible to only run with your headlights during the day. However, there are of course some exceptions to the rule, just like everything. And that's why I think that point number 2 should be, always know your car. You always check your tires, you fill up with gas, you change the oil, pay attention to the lights as well. It's very important that when you are signaling or when you are driving during the day that you are not confusing other drivers, because the clearer you can be and the more, for lack of better words, polite that you can be on the road, the easier of a time everybody else around you will have driving. So there are also on a lot of vehicles nowadays a thing called automatic lights, and that's where I think a lot of the confusion comes in. People think if you're set to automatic lights, you can jump into your car, start it, and go. And while that might be true in some situations, it's not true for every single car. Some cars, if you buy them secondhand, may have had that automatic sensor adjusted or overridden. There are ways to do that, but we won't get into that today. The bottom line is you have to know your vehicle. Part of knowing your vehicle is determining whether or not your automatic lights are doing what you want them to do. Another article that I found simply said, automatic headlights do not immediately turn on in cases of sudden darkness, like if the vehicle drives through a tunnel. The way an automatic light works is that there's a sensor that tells the lights what the brightness level of light is reaching them, and if it's too low, then it kicks them on to nighttime, and if it's too bright or too high, then it turns it back to daytime running. And that's fine, but personally, I prefer to drive with my headlights on at all times, because the one thing that it can't really do very well is know if it's foggy or raining or snowing, and it can see the light bouncing off of things, but it can't actually tell for sure how much light is being received by the driver of the vehicle. So that's where they are nice and handy, but still not a perfect replacement for physically reaching over and turning on your headlights. Now, I've run into several situations over the last couple of weeks where people have been driving through dark or dangerous conditions, and they either are stuck on just running with their running lights, or maybe their automatic light switch isn't working. But here's some really quick examples that I shot from my dash cam in my car of people driving without the proper lights on.
Should be able to see them right ahead of me. They are probably, if they stopped dead still, I could probably catch up to them in like a second or two. Like, I'm right behind them. So I'm just gonna get back up to speed here, and you let me know when you see them.
So as you can see, in rain, sometimes even in the dark, these lights aren't on. And that poses a very dangerous situation to drivers, because typically at highway speeds, or even as low as 60, by the time something comes into full view and you try to stop then, you do not have enough time to stop. So if I'm driving down the road and I see something 150 meters ahead of me, but I wait until it gets 10 meters ahead of me before I start to stop, I'm going to slide right through that thing. Better for me to start braking way back than to hit it. That's how lights are supposed to help you out. And lights also help you out because when you have vehicles driving towards you, even during the day, and they don't have any lights on or they have lights burnt out, it's almost impossible to tell if that vehicle is parked in a lane on the side of the road or if it's actually driving. And so several times, even within the last couple of years, I've made left-hand or right-hand turns thinking that there was nobody driving, and pretty soon I realized that there's just a vehicle right there who doesn't have their lights on. And that's both very scary and also very frustrating, because yeah, I might have been safe, but if somebody else does the same thing and they're not paying as much attention as me, they could get hit. And then regardless of who's at fault, you still cause that issue because you didn't have your headlights on. I think it's always wise to run with those lights on, just out of the safety and consideration of others. So in December 1st of 1989, Canada, countrywide, made running lights a mandatory thing on all vehicles going forward. So if you have a vehicle that was made in, let's say, 1990 or on, that doesn't mean it'll have automatic lights. It just means that the running lights will automatically turn on when you start the vehicle. And the reason that they made the front lights a mandatory thing as opposed to the tail lights is because they found that through some studies, front lights significantly reduced accidents when you could see another vehicle oncoming, whereas taillights didn't. And point number 3, be courteous to others. This falls in line and pretty much extends what I've been saying for the first and second point as well. But even though you think you know what you're doing and everybody else should be able to tell as well, always have the consideration of giving other people a little bit extra time to know what you're doing and what you're planning, because you're driving vehicles that weigh tons and you're just going to change lanes or drive straight towards somebody and expect them to see you. Chances are it's going to end up badly.
Hey, can you hear me?
Go for Ned.
Where are the headlights on this thing? I'm in Flash's car!
I'll pull the specs.
Okay, you're on speakerphone.
Round knob to the left of the steering wheel, turn clockwise.
Okay, perfect.
If superheroes can take the time to worry about the safety of others and being able to see where they're driving, then I'm positive that you can as well. Okay, that's all that I have for today. That wasn't as long as the last episode. As I said, I'll try to keep these shorter and shorter. I'll have links to the different articles that I used for reference down below in the description box. And we'll see you next time. Oh, you know what? A stop line means you stop behind it. You don't start stopping there and end up 3 vehicles length into the intersection. And a dedicated turning lane, you don't have to specifically yield because it's dedicated. You've got your own lane. You can pay attention to other traffic, but keep driving. Ugh!